I always get a bit weary making videos around this topic. It seems the more I say about this stuff, the more I end up in a deeper hole with some of you guys. Comments telling me that I'm going to overdose or ruin my brain, saying things that pretty much anyone who hasn't taken a second of time to research would say, and it's kind of funny to me because when I first made this channel, I developed a series for debunking ignorance like this. Now don't worry, I don't care enough to make a psychedelic peasant quotes series or anything like that, but for those of you out there who weren't interested in doing any research, but still open to hearing me out, I'd like to take the time today to clear up a lot of misconceptions. Not specifically regarding the compounds, but instead regarding myself. Why I took them, what they did, and why I don't shudder anymore when someone calls me a junkie over it. Now before I begin this video, I want to say that I have no intention of talking about drugs on this channel. This channel has always been about my ideas and opinions on things in general, and I've kept an open mind about pretty much anything that came my way. See, there's something I don't understand about people, and it's intentionally keeping yourself simple. Let me reason this out with you for a second. It's rational for me to say that the more information you have, the smarter you're likely to become. Therefore, if someone came up to me and told me something, even if I didn't like the subject, I should, as a rational human being out to learn and fill my mind, listen to what the guy has to say. I've been told countless times about people's experiences on meth, heroin, cocaine, people doing the running of the bulls, getting careers as bomb diffusers or working next to radioactive material, and I'll listen to any of those stories. I'm not interested in trying any of those things myself, but this input from this individual is priceless. The fact that he's allowed me into his world and opened me up to something that I never would have known about before is a gift, but a lot of us treat it as an attack, and that mentality will keep you dumb. As I tell my tales lately, it seems some people can't listen without getting emotionally attached about something and getting angry. Well, Barry, you can try that, but I'm never going to. Yeah, that's boring information, and I never gave a shit if you wanted to take them or not. I just wanted to share my tale and be heard by open minds. So without further ado, let's have an uncomfortable conversation, shall we? Now, the first thing I want to get into is the idea that I become addicted or obsessed with these compounds, and I want to try to clear this one up. First of all, addiction is something that I've dealt with before. I had a physical addiction to laughing gas when I was living in Vietnam, and I once had a mental addiction to video games. I know the feeling of addiction. Your mind will not stop thinking about the thing you're addicted to. It'll make your body feel as though it's in pain, and you would do anything, make a fool of yourself simply to access that dependency. Now, not only is it incredibly laughable that I'd be addicted to psychedelics, it's physically not possible. Psychedelics have been shown to leave no physical dependency. Funnily enough, they tend to cure addiction with an 80% average accuracy. If this isn't enough, taking psychedelics is often not pleasant. Don't get me wrong, being shown your place in the universe, being filled to your core with love, seeing geometry that's unexplainable and seems dimensions beyond ours is beautiful. Simply majestic and truly mind-opening, but goddamn it if it's not some of the most painful experiences you'll ever have to go through. These things take that part of your brain, the part that I was discussing earlier that shuts conversations down, doesn't allow you to think about this or that because it bothers you, and turns it completely off. You no longer have an attachment to these hard beliefs. For example, and I'm not saying this is a 100% guarantee, but if a heavily religious man took a psychedelic and had negative thoughts about Jesus, or sexual thoughts regarding men, the guy wouldn't be as appalled as he normally is. Your mind is instantly and totally open to any and every idea. In a way, you become every mind all at once. No mentality or perception or worldview is off limits to you anymore. Let me give you an example from a trip that I had. I was over at a friend's house. It was maybe the second or third time that I'd taken mushrooms, and my friend was watching a movie. In the film, the main character was sitting with his mother, and she was lying on her deathbed. Right before his eyes, she died, and I was sent into a trip. Now, I guess it's only fair for me to try to describe what these are. A trip, as simple as possible, is a dream. It's the most vivid daydream you could ever have. It actually feels like your consciousness is pulled from your body and placed in a new situation, and you are legitimately there. Now, of course, I say dream because the chemical that's been activated within you is dimethyltryptamine, which is the molecule that activates in REM sleep. Mushrooms, structurally broken down, is 4-hydroxy-N,N-dimethyltryptamine, so you're literally eating dream-inducing fungus. Either way, I ended up in a situation where I'm sitting by my mother's bed, and she's dying. She told me that she loved me, and right in front of me, she left. Right then, I realized that any of the questions that I had about her life, any stories that I wanted to hear about her childhood, any advice that I needed, died with her. I had taken for granted the time that I'd spent with my mother, as I'd always figured that I'd have more time to hear about it later. I'd have time to get to know her, or even better still, I grew up with her. I already know her well enough. What more do I need to know? Now, of course, a lot of this seems obvious. Everybody dies, Barry. If you ever tried fooling yourself, then you're just that. But I learned that day that there's a difference between knowing something and understanding something. This experience that I had was as real as I am right now. I saw my mother die, and it was only then that I truly respected the time that I have left with the people in my life. This is an example of a thought that I wouldn't allow myself to have. Why would I ever want to fantasize about my mother's death? But because I was allowed to actually experience her passing, I finally realized how much these people in my life meant to me, and how easily you can take them for granted. Hard to get addicted to watching your family die over and over again, so let's clear that one off right now. You don't take them to feel good, you take them to grow. The next one that I want to talk about is me overdosing on this stuff. These compounds are very dangerous, and if you take too much, you'll die. This is repeated so much by the news, and I hate to be insensitive here when I say this, but when I hear these kinds of things, it's obvious to me that you didn't care. You didn't care enough to take the time to use Google, you didn't care enough about me to do any research. You probably just heard something the news said and let them tell you how to think and feel about it. I'm bored by that personality, but again, if you did get angry at me before and didn't do any research, we can clear that up right now. Doctors use the term LD50 when talking about toxicity regarding any substance. LD50 represents a lethal dose that kills 50% of participants. So, for example, water has an LD50 of 90 kilograms, or 198.4 pounds. You drink that much water and you die. Now, I don't want to be overly radical here, but this water sounds like a pretty dangerous compound. Let's take a look at some popular drugs and their LD50. Bear in mind that these tests are done on rats, but we'll start with caffeine. Caffeine has an LD50 of 192 milligrams per kilogram, meaning for a human, 240 milliliters of coffee, which is equal to about 118 cups. Alcohol is 7,060 milligrams per kilogram, which is equal to about 13 shots of at least 40% and above alcohol content. Nicotine is about 0.5 to 1 milligram per kilogram to kill a human, which is incredibly lethal. Here's a fun fact for you. If you ate 5 cigarettes, you just die. Smoking them will make it last longer, but I thought that was a neat little bit of info. Now, I don't want to bore you, so I'm going to move on real fast to the compounds in question. Marijuana has an LD50 of 8.45 kilograms for a full-sized human. This is almost 19 pounds of marijuana, and you'd have to smoke it in less than 15 minutes in order to die. You'd die of asphyxiation before the marijuana even killed you. How about mushrooms? 1.7 kilograms of mushrooms, which is equal to about 3 pounds dry, or 37 pounds of fresh mushrooms. The average dose is about 3 to 5 grams, and if you do more than that, you're really asking for a wild time. LSD has no recorded LD50, and by all means you can look this up as much as you want. LSD cannot kill you simply by ingestion. Same with DMT. Your brain breaks down that neurotransmitter so fast because it has to do it every night. If you dream, then you're producing and activating DMT, and our bodies eat it so fast that you honestly would never be able to overdose on it if you tried. Now, just because you can't OD on this stuff does not mean it's safe to take, and I need that to be incredibly clear. Some people who take this stuff are idiots. They go to a party and they start drinking, start smoking weed, taking Molly, hitting ketamine and cocaine, and then they top it off with a psych. Duh, you're going to be jumping out of a window, you cocktailed yourself. But even still, these compounds don't treat everyone the same. I've had many friends decide to take a psychedelic and it scared them to death, traumatized them royally, and left them feeling broken for a long time. And there are many factors that can cause this kind of thing to happen. Not that I need to go into it, but if some of you guys are getting upset at me because I'm being unsafe, then perhaps the research that I've done over the past 3 years can reassure you that I'm gonna be alright. The last thing I'll say in regards to the safety of these compounds. According to human history, these substances have been used with us since the beginning. Marijuana, funny mushrooms, silly cactus, and burning bushes are our human history. So if you need some sort of evidence that this stuff isn't going to kill us, just research Aztecs, Incas, Mayans, Egyptians, Native Americans. Alternatively, you could throw a dart at a world map, randomly pick any date, and find a tribe that had been using these things for spiritual growth. Whether or not you believe the stuff people say about the experiences these things offer is one thing, but I don't care to hear people tell me that they're worried about my physical well-being. It's ridiculous, and we have the internet. Now, the last thing I want to sort out with you guys is this slippery slope idea. Marijuana is a gateway drug. You take it and you'll try them all, and this can be true to an extent. Go with me on this, but I was told my whole life that any drug will kill you and ruin your brain and yada yada. I researched weed for a month because my friends smoked it and I wanted to make sure they'd be safe. What I found was that I'd been lied to about marijuana, and it's leagues safer than almost any legal drug we have on the market. I then hear about psychedelics and I get scared for my friends and I do my research for a few months and I realize the same thing. These goddamn things aren't going to hurt you at all. They're safer than anything we can legally access. What the hell? So of course, when that happens, you start to wonder what else you've been lied to about, and it can often lead people down some unfortunate paths. The difference between them and myself is I'm doing extensive research on anything before I put myself through it, and even if I notice it's harmless, I'm still often not inclined. For example, MDMA, more commonly known as ecstasy. It's an amphetamine. It makes your body feel amazing. Has some pretty negative side effects though, especially if you take it often, so why would I be inclined? Another one, cocaine. A rich man's drug. You do a safe amount, and you will honestly be fine. Again, not interested in trying it. Heroin. Apparently this stuff makes you feel better than you could ever feel in your life. The compound releases all the stored dopamine in your body, and you get the greatest rush of happiness that you'll ever feel. Apparently, people who use heroin also cannot get sick. You become impervious to illness, but you're instantly addicted because after you've drained that dopamine, it takes months to regenerate it, and you'll feel more depressed than you ever have. So to try to get that feeling back, you'll reach for the heroin again. Do I even need to say that I'm not interested? The thing that I feel gets people in trouble is shying away from research like this. People think that they never have to know what these drugs do to the human body because they'll never try them. And then there they are presented by the situation, and instead of having any rational reason to get out of it, they just jump right in, and it's this ignorance that does that. This is why DARE failed. You don't fix a problem by making people ignorant. You educate objectively and allow people to make their own choices. Okay, Barry, so then why did you choose psychedelics? If you're so high and mighty that you turn away from other drugs that may even be harmless, why'd you take those ones? What's the difference here? And this is a good question. This is the part of the video that's going to be more subjective, but after I tried them the very first time, I could tell that they were important. I realized that I barely knew such a small fraction of what reality was. I was a literate third-dimensional thinker who only used objective science to reason with my surroundings. It felt like the most rational way to be. But what I realized was I'd been ignoring full facets of what life is, and these compounds allowed me to realize them. One, for example, that I'd struggled with for a long time and never knew. I turned off my empathy, and I did it when I was very young. Back when I was 4 or 5, a stray cat came to our house. He became friends with our cat, but this stray was diseased. He had worms and distemper. Now, I was too young to understand that, and I instantly fell in love with this cat. I mean, how can't you when you're this young, innocent little animal-loving boy whose dream it was at the time to grow up and be a vet? Either way, my father shot this cat. He killed it, and he tried to do it secretly, but my brother and I watched from our window as he took this cat's life. Now, I only tell this story because it was from that point that I locked my heart up and I didn't even realize that I'd done it. When people were sad or hurt, if I was at a funeral for someone, if I hurt someone, which I would do over selfish motivation, I was straight up psychopathic for a while and I never even realized how bad it was. When I took mushrooms, I was shown what love was. My heart was burst open and it hurt so bad to feel that I tried very hard to shut it down again. And I've really been taking these past few years to just be vulnerable and open with my emotions. I realized that even though life was a lot easier when I didn't care, I was hurting myself in the worst way. I wasn't really living. Say what you want about psychedelics, say what you will about me and my dirty and evil actions, but I can love in a way that I never could before because of these compounds. Now I know this video is long, but like I said in the beginning, I don't want to make a lot of videos on this subject. I just wanted you guys to have as much information from my side as possible. I hadn't let you in for such a long time, and the things that I did tell you, I left kind of vague, which allowed you to draw conclusions that weren't true. For those of you who are never going to take these compounds but are open-minded enough to listen to my story, I thank you. And I want to share this experience with you in as much detail as possible so you can be as close to it as you can without ever having to try them. This next and final part is my rendition of the psychedelic experience. So you take these things and the first thing you notice is your vision is crystal clear. Clearer than it should be. It's like if you played GTA at standard settings your whole life and then downloaded an overhaul mod. You see every tiny detail in everything, and as time goes on, there winds up being another layer on top of reality. It's made up of these incredibly abstract and ginormous mandalas. It's odd because it almost adds an extra dimension, but not a full one. It's like picking up on another spectrum of light that you've never seen before, but at the same time, feels like it's obviously been there your whole life. And it makes everything around you look like it has extra dimensions. Shapes are very apparent and outlines on things become perfect, rounded or sharper depending on what you're looking at. It's at this point that things start to move. Everything you look at starts to come alive. It'll breathe or wave. Trees look like they're perpetually growing but staying the same size. The sky will look like a big video game screen. Clouds will become any shape and even move in ways that represent that shape perfectly. For example, if you see a dragon, it'll fly across the sky. It's almost like, remember when you were a kid and you'd look at those horses on the merry-go-round and your imagination was so powerful that you could believe that they'd come alive and be real? Some of us were even creative enough that we could see them come alive in our minds, and that's what happens in this regard. It's kind of annoying to you as you're coming up on this stuff because it makes you wonder if it's real. I mean, think about it. I have an enhanced visual acuity right now. I'm picking up another layer of something that feels like it's always been there. I just haven't been able to see it, or at the very least, not since I was a kid. The mind is a hallucination machine. It takes information from the external and puts it into digestible images for you, and being as how I only know my reality through my eyes and my feelings, then if I'm being objective here, my subjective reality is the only thing that I can know actually exists. Therefore, when I see this stuff, it's in a sense as real as anything else I've ever seen. Now, you could tell me, no, Barry, it's not real. It's just your mind playing tricks. But by that very same logic, you can use it to disprove yourself. How can I know if you're real if the things I saw up there felt as real as you are to me? Don't get stuck in that paradox too long. Trust me, it only leads to an existential place. Now, at this point, you close your eyes, and you're met with the most impossible and unexplainable geometry. Geometry that you can instantly tell is not from here. You've never seen shapes move like this before, and you've certainly never even seen a shape with this many dimensions before. It's obvious to you that you shouldn't be able to understand it, but you can somehow. It's like our minds have access to this higher plane of existence where everything is energy instead of matter. And for some people, this place feels very familiar to them, which is also odd. Beyond the shapes, you'll also see language and artifact from ancient civilizations, Asian, Aztec, Roman, Egyptian, and you wonder if all these civilizations' art is stored in your head? If the information is stored in the compound somehow? And if not, then did we adopt some of our art from the visions that came from these compounds? We all know these civilizations took them religiously, but who the hell knows? The final thing that happens to you is the trip. I described this one earlier, but imagine sitting there talking to a friend. You're having a good conversation with him when you're pulled out of your body, shot instantly into a new reality where you undergo a car accident or a bear attack or something. And I use those examples because they're exciting. I've never tripped about a bear mauling or a car accident, but either way. The trip you have is deliberate and intentional. You needed to see it specifically how it was presented to you, and then you can be left with synchronicities that demonstrate the reality and importance of the situation that you just underwent. Then you're thrown back into your body after having gone through this experience, and you and your friend have somehow still been carrying on the conversation without you even being there. Figure that one out for me, because it's incredible that our minds have that ability and we don't even know about it. This is why I tried them, and this is why I would want to talk about them. I was lied to for my whole life about what the human mind can do, and I was lied to about what these compounds can do, and I'm not going to stand for it. We have access to free information for the first time in human history, and I've had enough of higher-ups telling me what I can and can't do and what I can and can't think. There are many who believe that we're on this planet to refine our souls, that we reincarnate over and over until we figure it out, and I don't give my mind to one belief, but one thing has been made clear to me. What I do with my time on this earth is for nobody else to get involved in. As long as I'm not doing harm to others, you can leave me alone. I'll explore my mind, and you can watch the Kardashians.